God bless. 14 signs you're dealing with a narcissist. When it comes to determining whether someone you know is a narcissist, most people make it more complicated than it needs to be. I use the duck test. If it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it probably is a duck. There are no physical blood tests, MRIs, or exact determination that can identify narcissism. Even therapists have to go on the observation of the behavior, attitudes, and reactions that a person presents to determine narcissism. What makes it simple is the fact that we know exactly what a narcissist looks like: superiority and entitlement. The world of narcissists is all about good, bad, superior, inferior, and right, wrong. There's definitely hierarchy with the narcissist at the top, which is the only place he feels safe. Narcissists have to be best, the most right, and most competent and do everything that their way. Own everything, control everyone. Interestingly enough, narcissists can also get that superior feeling by being the worst, the most wrong, or the most ill, upset, injured for a period of time. Then they feel entitled to receive soothing concern and recompense, and even the right to hurt you or demand apologize to make things even. Exaggerated need for attention and validation. Narcissists need constant attention, even following you around the house, asking you to find things, or exactly saying something to grab your attention. Validation for the narcissist counts only if it comes from others. Even then, it doesn't count for much. A narcissist need for validation is like a funnel. You pour in positive, supportive words, and they just flow out the other end and are gone, no matter how much you tell narcissists you love them, admire them, approve them, and they'll never feel it's enough, because deep down they don't believe anyone can love them. Despite all your self-absorbed and grandiose bragging, narcissists are actually very insecure and fearful of not measuring up. They constantly try to elicit praise and approval from others to shore up their fragile ego, but no matter how much they are given, they always want more. Perfectionism. Narcissists have an extremely high need for everything to be perfect. They believe they should be perfect. You should be perfect. Events should happen exactly as expected, and life should play out precisely as they envision it. This is an excruciatingly impossible demand, which results in the narcissistic feeling dissatisfied and miserable much of the time. The demand for perfection leads to narcissists to complain and be constantly dissatisfied. Great need for control. Since narcissists are continually disappointed with the imperfect way life unfolds, they want to do as much as possible to control it and mold it to their liking. They want and demand to be in control, and their sense of entitlement makes it seem logical to them that they should be in control of everything. Narcissists always have a storyline in mind about what each character in their interaction should be saying and doing. When you don't behave as expected, they become quite upset and unsettled. They don't know what to expect next because you're off script. They demand that you say and do exactly what they have in mind, so they can reach their desired conclusion. You have a character in their own play, in their internal play, not a real person with your own thoughts and feelings. Lack of responsibility and blaming and deflecting. Although narcissists want to be in control, they never want to be responsible for the results, unless, of course, everything goes exactly their way and their desired result occurs. When things don't go according to their plan, or they feel criticized or less than perfect, the narcissist plays all the blame and responsibility on you. It has to be someone else's fault. Sometimes they blame. That blame is generalized: all police, all bosses, all teachers, all Democrats, and so on. At other times, the narcissist picks up a particular person or a clue rule to blame: his mother, the judge, the laws that limit what he wants to do. Most often, however, the narcissist blames the one person who's the most emotionally close, most attached, loyal, and loving in his life, you. To maintain the facade of perfection, narcissism always have to blame someone or something else. You are the safest person to blame because you are the least likely to leave or reject him. Lack of boundaries. Narcissists can't accurately see where they end and you begin. They are like 2-year-olds. They believe that everything belongs to them. Everyone thinks and feels the same way as they do, and everyone wants the same things they do. They are shocked and highly insulted to be told no. If a narcissist wants something from you, he'll go to the great lengths to figure out how to get through persistent scheduling, demanding, rejecting, and pouting. Lack of empathy. Narcissists have very little ability to empathize with others. They tend to be selfish and self-involved and are usually unable to understand what other people are feeling. Narcissists expect others to think and feel the same way they do, and seldom give any thought to how others feel. They also rarely apologetic, remorsefully, and guilty. But narcissists are highly attuned to perceived threats, anger, and rejection from others. At the same time, they are nearly blind to the other feelings of the people around them. They frequently misread subtle facial expressions, and they are typically biased towards interpreting facial expressions are negative unless they are acting out your emotions dramatically. The narcissist won't accurately perceive what you're feeling. Even saying "I'm sorry, I love you" when the narcissist is on the edge and angry can backfire. He won't believe you may even misperceive your comment as an attack. In addition, if your moods and expressions are incongruent, the narcissist will likely respond erroneously. This is why narcissists often misinterpret sarcasm as actual agreement or joking from others as a personal attack. Their lack of ability to correctly read body language is one reason narcissists are deficiently empathetic to your feelings. They don't see them, they don't interpret them correctly, and overall they don't believe you feel any different than they do. Narcissists also lack of understanding about the nature of the feelings. They don't understand how their feelings occur. They think the feelings are caused by someone and something outside of themselves. They don't realize that their feelings are caused by your own biochemistry, thoughts, and interpretations. In a nutshell, narcissists always think you caused their feelings, especially the negative ones. They conclude that because you didn't follow their plan or because you made them feel vulnerable, you are to blame. This lack of empathy makes true relationships and emotional connections with narcissists difficult or impossible. They just don't notice what anyone else is feeling. Emotional reasoning. You'll probably make the mistake of trying to reason and use logic with a narcissist to get him to understand the painful effects his behavior has on you. You think that if he understands how much his behavior hurts you, he'll change. Your explanations, however, don't make sense to a narcissist who only seems able to be aware of his own thoughts and feelings. Although narcissists may say they understand, they honestly don't. Therefore, narcissists make most of their decisions based on how they feel about something. They simply must have their red sports car based entirely on how they feel about driving it, not by whatever it is a good choice to make for the family or for the budget. If they are bored or depressed and they want to move and end the relationship or start a new business, they always look to something or someone outside themselves to solve their feelings and needs. They expect you to go along with their solutions, and they react with irritation and resentment if you don't. Splitting. The narcissist personality is split into good and bad parts, and they also split everything in their relationship into good and bad. In negative thoughts or behavior are blamed onto you or others, whereas take credit for everything that's positive and good. They deny their negative words and actions, which continuously accusing you of disapproving. And they also remember things as completely and wonderful, good and wonderful, or as bad and horrible. They can't seem to mix these two constructs. Marty labeled the whole vacation June and the worst ever because the hotel room didn't meet his expectation and the weather wasn't perfect. Bob was blamed for 20 years because he wasn't there when his wife had their child, even though he was stranded in Chicago in the snow room. Mary's husband dismissed her concerns about the $30,000 cost of the new landscaping because he loved it. Narcissists aren't able to see, feel, or remember about the positive and negative in a situation. They can deal only with one perspective at a time. There's fear. The narcissist's entire life is motivated and energized by fear. Most narcissists' fear are deeply buried and repressed. They constantly afraid of being ridiculed, rejected, and wrong. They may have fears about germs, about losing the money, about being emotionally and physically attacked, about being as sad, bad, or inadequate, about being abandoned. They make it difficult and sometimes impossible for the narcissist to trust anyone else. In fact, the closer your relationship becomes, the less they will trust you. Narcissists fear any true intimacy and vulnerability because they are afraid you see their perfections and imperfections and judge and reject them. No amount of reassurance seems to make a difference because narcissists deeply hate and reject their own shameful imperfections. Narcissists never seem to develop trust in the love of others. They continually test you with worse and worse behavior to try to find your breaking point. Their gripping fear of being found out or abandoned never seems to dissipate. Anxiety. Anxiety is an ongoing vague feeling that something bad is happening or about to happen. Some narcissists show their anxiety in talking constantly about the doom that is about to happen, while some hide and repress their anxiety. But most narcissists project the anxiety onto the closest loved ones, accusing them of being negative and supporting mentally ill, not putting them first, not responding to their needs, or being selfish. All this is designed to transfer anxiety to a loved one in an attempt to not feel it themselves. As you feel worse and worse, the narcissist feels better and better. In fact, he feels stronger and more superior as you feel your anxiety and depression grow. Wow. Shame. The narcissists don't feel much guilt because they think they're always right. They don't believe their behavior really affect anyone else, but they harbor a lot of shame. Shame is the belief that there is something deeply and permanently wrong or bad about who you are. Being burdened and deeply depressed part of the narcissist are all the insecurities, fears, and rejected traits that he is constantly on guard to hide from anyone, including himself. God bless. Shame. Narcissists don't feel much guilt because they think they're always right and they don't feel their behavior really affect anyone else. But they harbor a lot of shame. Shame is the belief that there is something deeply and permanently wrong and about who you are. But it's in a deeply repressed part of the narcissist are all the insecurities, fear, and rejected traits that he's constantly on guard to hide from everyone, including himself. The narcissist is actually ashamed of all these rejected thoughts and feelings. For example, I had one narcissist client who was into skydiving and other intense risk-taking behaviors tell me that he never felt fear. Fear, he said, was evil. He was clearly on the crusade to defeat it. Keeping his vulnerabilities hidden is essential to the narcissist's retained self-esteem or false self. Ultimately, however, what makes it impossible for them to be completely real and transparent, an inability to be truly vulnerable. Because of their inability to understand feelings and their lack of empathy and constant need for self-protection, narcissists can't truly love or connect emotionally with other people. They cannot look at the world from anyone else's perspective. They are essentially emotionally blind and alone. This makes them emotionally needy. When one relationship is no longer satisfying, they often overlap relationships and start a new one as soon as possible. They desperately want someone to feel their pain, to sympathize with them and make everything just as they want it to be. But they have little ability to respond to your pain or fear or even your day-to-day need for care and sympathy, an ability to communicate or work as part of a team. Thoughtful, cooperative behavior requires a real understanding of each other's feelings. How will the other person feel? Will this action make both of us happy? How will this affect our relationship? These are questions that narcissists don't have the capacity or the motivation to think about. Don't expect the narcissist to understand your feelings. Give up anything he wants for your benefit. It's useless. Want more insight? Things you should always be selfish about in your partnerships and questions that keep your marriage from ending. Wow. The narcissist personality has a grandiose sense of self-importance, exaggerates achievements, talents, expects to be recognized as superior without commensurate achievements, is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. believes that he/she is special and unique, that can only be understood by, should associate with other special and high status people, requires excessive admiration, has a sense of entitlement, unreasonable expectations, and especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance with his or her expectations, is interpersonally exploitative, takes advantage of others and achieve his or her own ends, lacks sympathy, is unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others, is often envious of others, believes that others are envious of her, shows arrogance, haughty behaviors or attitudes, have found too that narcissistic parents demand that you agree with them or else they will reject you, because being challenged to them means they are not loved. And therefore, adult children of narcissistic experience love that's conditional only. From that experience of needing to behave in a certain way to be loved and accepted, they never receive the validation, empathy, and unconditional love and nurture that we all humans desperately crave. For me personally, the most damaging and egregious example of narcissism I've experienced involved not only toxic colleagues and bosses, but individuals in my personal life as well. Never good enough or one valuable enough, deeply afraid to speak up confidently or challenge others. Very attuned, this can lead to inability to protect themselves from others' emotions, chronically unsure of themselves, and overly worried about what others think of them. Deeply insecure because they never experienced unconditional love. Any love or care that was given was done so under certain challenging conditions that made them feel unauthentic and fake. Take the relationships they have formed are deeply challenging and unsatisfying. When they step back and look at this relationship honestly, they see narcissism all around them and have no idea what to do. Finally, they feel used and beaten up by their work, by their bosses and their colleagues, and can't understand why their careers are so challenging and difficult. If the upper experience resonates you, it's time to gain greater awareness of what you have experienced in childhood so you can have greater choice over your thoughts, mindsets, and behaviors in order to heal. We just don't get over being raised by a narcissistic, strong therapeutic support to peel the onion and heal the wounds. To have the courage to look at the specific brand of the narcissism you experience, how you have impacted you, and the way you operate, and learn how behaviors that will allow you to heal the child within and become adult you long to be. Wow. 6 toxic behaviors that push people away, how to recognize them in yourself and change them. Wow. I see every day taking everything personally. The 4 agreements, coaching programs, really. People are toxic to be around when they believe that everything that happens in life is a direct assault on them or in some way all about them. The reality is what people say and do to you is much more about them than you. People's reaction to you about their filters and their perspective, wounds, and experiences, whether people think you are amazing or believe you are the worst. Again, it is more about them. It's not saying that we should be narcissists and ignore all feedback. I'm saying that so much hurt, disappointment, and sadness in our lives comes from overtaking things personally, when it is far more productive and healthy to let go of others' good and bad opinion of you and operate with your own heart, intuition, and wisdom as your guide. So yes, don't take anything personally, obsessive about negative thoughts. It's very hard. It's very hard to be around people who can't or won't let go of negativity. When they dwell on, they speak incessantly about the terrible things that could happen and have happened, the slights they have suffered, the unfairness of life. These people stubbornly refuse to see the positive side of life and the positive lessons that they are transpiring. Pessimism is one of thing. By remaining perpetually locked in the negative thoughts is another. Only seeing the negative, operating from the viewpoint that everything is negative against you, is kind of way of thinking and living, and you can change that. And treating yourself like a victim. Another toxic behavior is a non-stop complaining that fuels your sense of victimization, believing you are a victim that you have no power to exert and no influence on the direction of your life. Is toxic stance that keeps you stuck and small. Working as a therapist with people who have offered terrible trauma in their lives but found the courage to turn it all around, I know that we have access to far more power, authority, influence over our lives than we initially believe. When you stop whining and refuse to see yourself help helpless victim of fate chance discrimination, that you will find that you are more powerful than you realize, but only if you choose to accept that reality. Cruelty, lacking in empathy, or putting yourself in others' shoe. One of the toxic and damaging behavior, cruelty, stems from a total lack of empathy, concern, and compassion for others. You see it every day on the line and media, people being devastatingly cruel and destructive to others because they can. They tear people down online, but in a cowardly way, using their anonymity as a weapon. Cruelty, backstabbing, and ripping someone to shreds is toxic, and it hurts you as well as the target. I had a powerful learning experience about this a few years ago. I came to the house one day in a nasty mood and shared a mean snipping comment to my husband about the way the neighbors were parenting her child through one of his problem phases. In less than 24 hours, the very same issue, the parent was dealing with the same home to roost in my house and my child. It was as if the universe sent me a message that if you want to be cruel and demeaning about someone, you'll give you the same experience you have judged so negatively, so you can learn some compassion. And I did. If you find yourself backstabbing and tearing someone else down, stop in your tracks, dig deep and find compassion in your heart and realize that you're all the same. Excessive reactivity and inability to damage your emotions and toxic to anyone around you. We all know these people, men and women, who explode over the smallest hiccup of problem, yelling at the bank teller for the long line, screaming at your assistant for the PowerPoint error he made, and losing it with a child or spilling milk on the floor. If you find that you are overly reactive, losing it at every turn, you need some outside assistant to help you gain control over your emotions and understand what is the root of your emotionality. There is more to it that appears on the surface. An outside perspective, a new kind of support is critical. Needing constant validation. Finally, people who constantly strive for validation and self-esteem, obsessing about achieving outward measures of success, are exhausting to be around. Those men and women who get caught in the need to prove their worth over and over and constantly want to win over their colleagues and peers are toxic and draining. Overly attacking to how things have to be and look, and to achieving certain milestones and accomplishments rather than going with life in a more flexible, easy manner can wear you out and bring everyone else around you down. There's a bigger picture in your life, and it is not about what you achieve or fail to at today. It's about the journey, the process, the path, that what you are learning and applying, how you are helping others and growing process in you allow yourself to engage in. Stop stressing over the particular outcomes. Life, I need that promotion now, or my house has to be bigger and more beautiful than my neighbors. Your desperate need to improve your success and build your self-esteem through outer measures of success is sadly apparent to everyone but you, and is pushing away your very happiness outcomes you're longing for. To build a happier, more rewarding career, work with me. Join. The bullying narcissist built up his high self-image by persecuting you and making you feel like a loser. Seductive narcissist makes you feel good about yourself, as if you're a winner, in order to secure your admiration, then dumps you. The know-it-all narcissist constantly demonstrates superior knowledge in order to make others feel ignorant and uninformed and inferior. The vindictive narcissist's main challenge or wounded will be everything possible to destroy the perceived cause of shame. The addictive narcissist seeks fulfillment of an idealized self through drugs, sex, fantasy, any ways that are often invisible to outsiders. Caprino, what are the best strategies of helping people deal with extreme narcissism, both the workplace and the personal life? Virgo, here strategies that I have found to be effective. Don't engage in battle. Remember that the winner-loser dynamic is always in play with extreme narcissism, even if you're not ready. Apparent, because extreme narcissists are relentless in defending their own self-love image. You will never prevail if you fight back to prove you're actually a winner. Do nothing but that might stimulate shame. Bear in mind that shame is always the issue, even though the extreme narcissist is almost always unaware of it. For his reason, be excessively cautious not to wound his or her self-esteem even when you don't see your comments or behaviors as hurtful. Set aside expectations of fairness and justice. Objections such as "I don't mean to say it that way" or "that's not fair" are meaningless to the extreme narcissist. Winning is all that matters, and you need to recognize that you'll never persuade the extreme narcissist to be reasonable and document everything. Because extreme narcissists are often ruthless and vindictive, take every precaution to defend yourself. This often means laying the foundation for legal action that may prove necessary, including preserving emails or other written exchanges, getting witness statements, etc. The end game often depends upon having legal proof. Get as much distance as possible. You will never change the extreme narcissist. Don't delude yourself that you can get him or her to see the line. Don't think that you can be saved and addictive narcissist or convince the seductive narcissist to come back. Capri, know what happens to children of narcissists. What do they need to be aware of in themselves, and why is it common that adult children of the narcissist attract more narcissistic people and responses in their lives? Adult children of narcissistic parents are attuned to the need and expectations of the self-absorbed people, because this is how they survive childhood. They learn that to be accepted, they must shape their behavior, personality to meet the needs of others. As adults, they naturally fall into the same pattern of other narcissistic people because it is familiar to them. They believe such abnegating behavior will earn them love and acceptance. Each new relationship revives the hope that this time, at long last, someone will give them the love and fully acceptance they have always longed for. For this reason, the adult children of narcissistic parents need to be aware of the ways they will sacrifice their own needs to serve others. Selfish people, they need to place a value on their own needs and develop a sense of the self-worth apart from the approval constantly seek from their partner, friends, and colleagues. Oh God. Yes. Living with a narcissist, overcome the love locking you in, deal with abuse. Many of us ended up in unhealthy relationship because in the beginning our partners held up a false front. Many of us felt or thought that we had met our soulmate, found the perfect partner, met that one special person in the universe. It's no surprise that we can fall in love with someone like this. Deal with abuse. Disordered people aren't just hurtful, they also spin our reality to make theirs less painful. They project their problems onto us, they blame us for what they do. After a while, it becomes hard to distinguish what is real from what is being projected and what is being distorted. We begin to doubt our reality and question whether we are the crazy ones. Worse, more disordered people hide their problems very effectively, concealing their disease from most people, causing us further confusion. The truth is, they are not trying, but they feel better than they can get us to carry.